Speed thrills. Precision wins. Every corner, every stop, every second. Calculated. Can you handle the pressure?
F1 Clash. Download for free from the App Store and Google Play.
It is 2026 and it is time for a brand new year of F1 sim racing. The teams and drivers are here ready at DreamHack Birmingham for 3 days of unforgettable action and a first step towards the coveted trophies. Well, all eyes have been on the start of a brand new F1 season as 50,000 spectators we're expecting over the next 3 days will be taking in this beautiful RS18 driven back in 2018 by Carlos Sainz. Red Bull are here in the background keeping the vibe alive, and we turn our attention now over to our 8th season of F1 sim racing. The competition couldn't be any stronger this year. The fans are in the background. Let's get some noise from these guys who realize they're live right now, because we are about to get underway. How good does that look? And if last season is anything to go by, then I tell you what, we are in for a superb season of action.
In DreamHack, and just look at this, the spectacle, the scenes, the sights. 2026 is alive and kicking, our 8th season, as Tom Deacon so rightly professed. We have got quite the lineups as we look ahead. I'm not alone, of course. We've got Kai Bikini joining me in commentary, and welcome as well, Nicola, joining Nicola Whom on the ground. You're going to be speaking to the drivers.
I'm going to be speaking to the drivers. I'm going to be up here chatting to you just at the start, but this is my first time experiencing esports in the metal, because normally I just watch it from home, but I'm so excited about this season. It's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, and the storylines, Kai. I mean, we're coming into this one after Jana Watmir picked up a record-breaking 3rd world title. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than this, beating Brendan Lee's record of 2 initial. They were level for a short time. Of course, last season it became 3. Looks good for a 4th, though.
He is looking very, very strong, and I think he's going to come into this season with a big target on his back. Jarno Opmeer, it's the big name. Everyone wants to be in front of that Red Bull car, but there's so many other stories classifying all over the grid. I'm so excited to see what's about to happen here, and if you're new to F1 sim racing, this is the perfect year to get involved.
Absolutely right. Well, it's Nicola's first time, obviously, coming into this. So
it's fun. On the notes earlier, it did say my name was Nicole, so I understand.
Yeah, listen.
I get it, but it is Nicola Hume. It's totally fine.
At least I can prove I can read, folks.
Yeah.
Now, that's at least something. But yeah, obviously, now we can look ahead to the format explainer, folks, and we'll just sort of breeze you through what you can expect to see through the course of time. As you can see, 9 teams in total, 12 events. $750,000 is the total prize pool as well. Those 9 teams each field a 3-driver esports roster for the season, with 2 drivers selected to compete at each and every single round. Drivers will battle across the 12 events for championship points, later contributed towards the standings, and that will lead us to where that prize pool will be distributed.
I've hot-footed it over to the desk to join you guys. So good to see you. I had to have another picture of that RS18, but it is so good to see you. This is our roster for this year, and just take it all in. How good is this? A LAN event, Kai. You've been following for years, way back when, back in the day when you were coming along to report, to interview these drivers. What does it feel like to be back up here now in such an incredible venue?
Well, it's an absolute privilege. It feels like a very full circle moment to be back here with you, Tom. I remember the first time that I met you was at an F1 esports event just back in 2019. I was probably about half the height that I was then.
Yeah,
couldn't see over this desk. Yeah.
And now you're tall enough to be at the desk, but
Just
it's
about.
incredible. What do we take from last year? What can people at home, if it's their first time watching, who are the people to sort of look out for, George?
Well, I'd say the main participants, Red Bull, obviously coming in. I mean, they've won teams titles. Freddie Rasmussen took his very first. It's hard to fathom, really, that Freddie took his first 2 seasons ago. Jarno Opmeer now with 3. Certainly, statistically, a number of championships, the greatest of all time now. I think that's undisputed. But when you look at Freddie's stats with his championship, I mean, the GOAT conversation can go many ways. But listen, we look at some of the other rosters that have come through. McLaren have got a great lineup. Alpine, I think, are very, very exciting. They made some serious moves. Otis Lawrence, after his debut win at Jeddah last season, what could he achieve this year?
We will find out, of course, but let's just recap for everyone. Maybe new to F1 sim racing, or maybe you just want to look back at some of these incredible highlights. Let's take a look then at the 2025 season where Jarno Opmeer became your third-time champion. There he is, collecting the trophy for the third time, and as you mentioned, George, it's never been achieved before. Will it happen this year? Will he go to success again, be crowned champion? I mean, they're a very, very strong lineup, but what do you take away from that season? Any surprises, any shocks for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think Ismail Fassi was the major standout. I mean, breaking in with Williams, who had never been in the title picture before, and now, of course, he's moved across to Ferrari, and that's quite a statement signing, certainly on the basis of where we're moving to through the course of this season. Other names to watch out for: Thomas Ronha, again, new colours for him. Always been in the picture since he debuted back in 2022, I think it was. I think coming into that, so he can continue his trajectory. His next step is a world title, and obviously to do it in a Mercedes where Jarno got his second. How about that? Yeah, the stat man has come out already. Kai, it's going to be tough work with this man who is almost like the F1 sim racing oracle at times. Kai, 13 roster changes, which have been sort of highlighted. 3 new rookies are coming in as well. But one name I didn't hear mentioned was Otis Lawrence. I was expecting the Welshman to talk and shout out another Welshman. But, he's moved potentially in with the title chance.
Well, in the practice that we had yesterday, Otis was looking so strong. And, of course, George is a brilliant commentator. Absolutely no bias to any of the Welshmen that are competing in the grid here.
Thank you.
But Otis has been so strong during the off-season. George has been keeping an eye on him, on his ranks over the off-season in his esports that he's been competing in as well. And with the new colours in the Alpine team, he's got Danny Barisney alongside him, one of the most precedented drivers on the grid. I think Otis Lawrence is one of the biggest names that we need to keep an eye on. He might be a little bit of an underdog in terms of the likes of Jarno Opmeer, but Otis Lawrence, keep an eye on that name.
One to watch. Well, you've just mentioned him, Jarno Opmeer. To everyone who is live here at DreamHack in Birmingham, I'd like to show a massive round of applause because we are going to welcome the reigning champion and the team's champions on to our incredible stage.
Jarno Opmeer, Liam Parnell now. How does it feel to come back here knowing that you are 3-time world champion with 3 different teams? You are back under a Red Bull Racing shirt again. How are you feeling?
Very good. A little bit nervous, of course, as we're just about to head into qualifying. But other than that, yeah, feeling confident. So, of course, exactly 1 year ago since we won the championship. So, yeah, we're going to try and do it again this year.
Well, I mean, I'm going to throw this out to you quickly because it came down to the last race of the season last year and there were a couple of people still in contention. So would you like to just kind of clear that up quickly before the last race of the season? Just get it done, you know?
That will be very lovely, but I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately.
Liam, you were part of the engineering team last year when you won the Constructors. So how are you approaching this season?
Same as last year, to be honest. We have a good team, we prepare well, so I'm looking forward to it.
So it's quite nice. You've already kind of got a team structure of how things work. You know that it works. But is there any changes that you've made this year as to how you're going to approach each race?
I mean, you always need to improve, otherwise other teams will catch up. So we always do things a little bit differently and try to find any advantage we can.
I mean, it's going to be a big year. We are starting racing in China, which, Jarno, is quite a good race for you, isn't it? I mean, you've won it 3 times on the trot, and like we have already heard, those that win China have kind of technically gone on to win a championship. So how do you feel about that, please?
It's hard to say. Usually the race goes really well for me. Qualifying not so well as compared to other tracks, but yeah, again, last year we maybe got a little bit lucky with the slipstreaming. This year that won't be the case, so we're gonna have to do it on raw pace.
So last season, you had loads of help with Freddie. He sort of helped you get that championship towards the end. So how have you been working together before the start of this season?
Just like last year, to be honest. Obviously, we have to share everything in order to get the most out of ourselves. This year, you know, the roles might be reversed, and I might have to help him towards the end of the season. But yeah, we're just going to see how the first 2 events unfold, and then we'll see further.
And be honest, because obviously you do, if you win the championship, you get your face put into the game. Have you been playing as yourself?
No, I always press Brandon Lee.
Fair enough, totally understandable. Now, here comes the dramatic bit, because I know this is going to be quite tricky, but these are the trophies from last season, but you do need to hand them back. You're going to need to give them back and then earn them back for this season, so please hand them over, wave those trophies goodbye, go and take your seat. Have a great race, Jarno. Thank you. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much. I hope they enjoyed them for those 12 months, and then they have to hand them back. So many things to break down there as we see our live audience, which is just so cool. I think it just adds to the spectacle of F1 sim racing to have fans at the front here watching it up close, can see the drivers, maybe like 5 meters away from them. Very, very cool. I want to talk about the teamwork there. Jarno Opmeer, a very humble champion, I would say, over the years, and able to say, as the season goes on, he might have to step into that role of letting Freddie go and become a 2-time champion. That's brilliant to hear.
That was technically, obviously, Freddie's role last season, and I think this is, very mature, I think, certainly on the driver's part. We talk about teammate rivalries. We've seen it we talk about Prost and Senna, we talk about Hamilton and Alonso. This also extends where we enter into the sim racing world as well. But yeah, Jarno is a rich talent. It's interesting how he talks about qualifying. I would argue that Jarno's quali pace hasn't been that great over the years, so it's all going to come out of the wash in strategy. So whether Freddie does leap and become that new focal point at Red Bull, I'm sure Jarno, like he has just suggested, will have no problem in helping his teammate.
Yeah. Kai, can it be repeated again before we go racing? Could it be Freddie Rasmussen? I mean, they score more points than any other drivers. 16 wins for Freddie Rasmussen, 15 for Jarno Opmeer. You look at the next highest winner, it's Thomas Ronhaar. They really are the team to watch. Target on them back.
I mean, me and George were speaking to some of the drivers yesterday, and every single driver said the exact same thing. Keep an eye on Red Bull. They are statistically the strongest team coming into this season. 4 drivers' championships, 4 constructors' championships spread between them. I think it's going to be difficult to topple the Red Bull train. Could it be a 4 for Jarno, or could it be another going the way of Freddie? We'll have to keep an eye on it. But we've got some very strong drivers to put up a contest, like the likes of Otis Lawrence that we mentioned earlier on. So, I don't know, anything can happen here. It's F1 esports, it's F1 sim racing, and I wouldn't count your chickens before they hatch.
Oh, perfect. Well, look, let's look at the teams. You sort of seem to have worn the same team outfit as well, gentlemen. Well-styled
Team
together. Let's meet some of these teams.
Absolutely, folks. Well, as we now arrive into season 2026, kickstarting with Haas, it's Joris Krozen and Tamas Gal. They line up for the American roster, who now look to chase further, grander results here this season as they develop into yet another campaign of sim racing. Moving through to Racing Bulls, it's Ulash Ozyildirim. Caused a storm last season, could be set to do one again, and now also met once more with Challengers champion Tom Manley back behind the wheel, and he'll be looking for wins in equal measure too. Heading to Aston Martin, we see Ruben Pedreño changing colours. He's now meaning green. Duncan Hoffland lining up alongside him, who has been part of the squad now for such a long time. Williams, speaking of lining up for a long time for a single team, of course, Nicholas Longue has spread himself quite vastly through the course of F1 sim racing. He's now at Grove in blue, and alongside Istvan Pukki, who equally joins the team for the first time. We head across to Red Bull. This is a team we will be focusing on because Jarno Opmeer chasing a fourth consecutive, well, certainly a fourth title, looking for back-to-back world titles, obviously, over the last couple of years. We've also got Freddie Rasmussen chasing a second campaign title. 5 constructors could be on their way to these 2. We'll soon find out. Obviously, a long campaign ahead. After Red Bull, though, we will eventually be moving onwards to Ferrari. Also, former Constructors champions John Evans will be lining up alongside Ismail Fassi, who moved from Williams into the Scuderia. So the 2 drivers from Maranello will now be looking to restore the Scarlet team back to full flight. Mercedes line up next with Thomas Ronhaar and Julian Klaffenbach. This was the story heading into this season. Former Sauber drivers, with Sauber now departing Formula 1 and Audi stepping in. A huge opportunity for Mercedes with these 2 guys.
Yeah, very big opportunity, and Mercedes, a precedented team here in the championship. They've managed to take home a championship twice with their drivers, 2018 being Brendan Lee and 2021 Jarno Opmeer also taking home a title, obviously moving over to the Red Bull colours now. But Mercedes, huge name in motorsport, huge name in the F1 sim world as well.
Yeah, we move across next to McLaren because Alfie Butcher, who's now the central figurehead after the departure of Lucas Blakely, Jake Benham arrives alongside him. A very youthful lineup here for this team, based, of course, in Woking. Alfie Butcher, debuting in Haas, has also shown that he can win races after a debut solid run that campaign, winning at Abu Dhabi, in fact, in the final race of the season before moving across to McLaren. Jake Benham, who left Mercedes, now settling in at McLaren as well himself. It'd be interesting to see how these 2 get on, especially after a positive test race yesterday. Last but certainly not least, a team that has certainly witnessed a high level of growth in terms of their sim racing offering. It's young Welsh startlet Otis Lawrence, who arrived in last year with a debut race win at Jeddah, and a man we never get tired of seeing, Danny Berejnay, who has led 2 drivers, 2 world titles in the past as a teammate, Jarno Opmeer being one of them, and of course Brendan Lee, who won our very first championship in 2017 and his second in 2018. It's all building up for an exciting year, Tom.
So much to get into, and lovely to see the big smiles from Danny Berejnay. There is a man who has had, I believe, 68 starts in F1 sim racing, and you can see that level of confidence from him, where he can take some time out. He's obviously focused. The drivers, as you heard from Jarno Opmeer, a little bit nervous to get started, get that first race underway in Shanghai, and then their nerves can settle a little bit. But just good to see his good nature, and that will come across. Let's look at the schedule then for today, because I would like to let everybody know what is about to unfold. We will kickstart with qualifying, of course, and then later on we'll be back for that race around China. And I think it has been mentioned already, we'll be back for Saturday to go racing in Japan, and then Bahrain to round out the 3 days here at DreamHack in Birmingham. But the stat that has been thrown out, I feel like you put a lot of pressure early doors, George, on everyone, because whoever wins China tends, as the data shows, to go on and to win the championship. That's a lot of pressure on any of those drivers out there. You're pretty much saying we won't do Japan and Bahrain. We may as well just wrap things up.
We're gonna wrap it up, I think, after this one, clearly. But we go back to 2018. Brendan Lee, of course, the very first race winner around this circuit, and of course, it is indeed the race winner of this track in every single outing we've had at China that has gone on to win the title. Brendan Lee in 2018, 2019, David Tonitza for Ferrari. Jarno Opmeer, though, 3 consecutive occasions, with obviously a victory in 2020, 2021. Of course, his first one was with Alfa Romeo, of course, since then becoming Sauber, now Audi in the real world of Formula 1. And we'll be looking forward to seeing them next season, of course, when they look to join for the first time. Jarno Opmeer with Mercedes, though, following that. And last season, leading to his 3rd and record-breaking championship title with Red Bull. So it definitely sets the scene, I think, to open up the new season.
I had the pleasure of going to China last year to watch the F1 race. It was incredible. What do you love about this circuit, Kai? What stands out for you? What are the drivers going to have to sort of look towards, potentially?
Thing is, China is such a driver circuit, and that's why every driver loves racing here. We've got 16 corners, 5.4 kilometers of action, and the great thing is about China is there's such a variation in corners and sections. You've got the long sweeping corners like we see through 1, 2, and 3. Drivers will be hitting those corners at about 320 kilometers an hour, maxing out the revs in 8th gear, then it's dropping it through. Technical sections are also linked in there through 9 and 10. You're going to be dropping down as far as 3rd gear. You'll see these drivers trying to get the rotation on the cars and trying to set the fastest laps possible. Curbs are very nice for the drivers around here. You'll see them mounting the curbs wherever possible to help rotate the car, and I think that will be an imminent factor throughout these qualifying sessions.
I love the way you've spoken about that with such passion that I actually, I was excited. Now I'm more excited. So Q1, how will it work then, George? Break it down for everybody who's maybe potentially new to F1.
Yeah, of course. Well, you know, across a typical grid, we will see the drivers that are situated at the bottom or below P15. They will be heading out at the end of Q1. We have 3 sessions of qualifying to take you through. Obviously, Q2, then the top 15 make their way through. Then 5 get eliminated at the end of that session, leaving a top 10 shootout for pole position. And judging from the pole stats of old, Danny Berejnay, definitely one to watch around this circuit. Took the first 2 pole positions that we have witnessed, of course, at this track as well. First one with Mercedes, then Alfa Romeo. But other drivers to watch out for, certainly one in particular as we make our way through the session. Ulash Yildirim took pole here last season, which was very outlandish for Racing Bulls. Quite an achievement on their part.
Outlandish has been used already. I love this. Well, best of luck for all the drivers. I'm curious to know, because with F1 sim racing, qualifying is so important. There is barely anything to separate the whole grid in terms of their time out there. So qualifying is so important, isn't it, Kai?
You will see the finest margins separating these drivers, and that just proves to you that all 18 competing here this weekend are the greatest in their class. They're the greatest drivers in the world, and I can tell you now, if you picked up a copy of the F1 25 game and were playing it at home, I would be very impressed if you get within half a second of the lap times that these drivers are setting. When I say they're in a league of their own, they are untouchable as well, and that's what we'll see. Expect the finest margins, hundredths of a second, thousandths of a second separating these drivers, and that's exactly what we'll see. In the race, it will be a completely different question, but qualifying is a test of the driver's mental and will.
And setting the tone as well, as I mentioned, their nerves probably all over the shop at the moment, maybe racing for a new team. We talk about track evolution at the time. That's where we see so many drivers staying in the pit at the moment. I'm curious to know, because when you mentioned Alfie Butcher starting out at Haas, what a phenomenal season he had. He was a rookie back then. The same could happen for maybe the 3 rookies that we've got here, Julian Klaffenbach. An opportunity to sort of be in the light of Otis Lawrence as well, having a phenomenal start, because they have no fear going into a new season.
Absolutely right, Tom. And I think what's interesting about Klaffenbach, he's actually had quite a lengthy period of time with Thomas Ronhaar as a teammate, of course, working through the realms of league racing as we see Jake Benham register the first time. Important to note, of course, remember these are intermediate tyres that the drivers are adopting. But obviously, just talking about Julian, these young drivers, you're absolutely right, Tom, they have no fear. They're not worried or imposed by the competition that they experience, which is great for the racing, honestly. And it does lead us to believe that we could see some Cinderella stories as we make our way through the course of a season. But Klaffenbach and Thomas Ronhaar, certainly from what we have seen pre-season in league racing competition, have worked together, increasingly well as they've progressed through the realms month on month. And now to be at a team like Mercedes is obviously exciting. Not to say that Sauber wasn't a great platform for them to work, but Mercedes, there's that presence, there's that aura, winning titles. Lewis Hamilton winning, of course, many of his with the Brackley team, and obviously Jarno Opmeer winning his 2nd world title with this team, Brendan Lee winning his 2nd world title with this team back in 2018 as well. So I must say, Thomas Ronhaar is quintessentially in good hands as well, much like Klaffenbach.
I noticed last year, Kai, there was an all-Spanish lineup for the Williams team. Alvaro Carreton is still with the team, not racing in China today, but they have 2 new signings, Nico Longuet and Istvan Pukki, who are both incredibly experienced drivers. If we were to sort of shine a light on that team, what do you make of it?
Well, I think it's a great lineup, and Williams have always been a great force in the F1 sim racing world. They've always invested so much into their drivers, into their development, and also nurturing the talent through. I think that's one thing that Williams does great as a constructor, is making sure that they aid the drivers, help them develop. If they're not so confident in the car, first of all, they'll help them make their way through. And that's why I think it's a great lineup that they have right now. Nico Longuet, obviously a very, very experienced racing driver here in the F1 sports sim world. Actually, a driver that I used to race against when I was in my sim racing world a little bit in the COVID times when I was a little bit younger.
I knew he'd mention it, George. I wondered how long it would take, but that is a great stat. And anyone watching online now around the world will think there have been moments in other league racing where they've got to race amongst some of their idols. It's interesting to say about that nurturing. It worked for Ismail Fassi. He's moved to Ferrari. A big step up, many would say, and a lot of expectation on him. Can he deliver again?
Well, this is it. I mean, to do it in Williams, I think, was an incredible feat enough, because this is not. It was never really on the cards for Williams necessarily to score as well as they did, because they never have done. I mean, obviously, historically, Caraton, a couple of pole positions he achieved up to that point. We could look back at Austria, for example, in 2020. But Ismail Fassi was a revelation, I think, when he stepped up. Ferrari obviously saw some talent right there in him, and for good reason. I mean, you don't become a runner-up in the championship, for no reason. He's not there for being rubbish. Race winner now as well. He's definitely got talent. The question is, can he replicate that? It's a different kind of pressure when you're racing for Maranello, Tom.
As we've seen over the years, there was a mention from Jarno Opmeer about when driving in the game, he will race as Brendan Lee. Shout out to the original GOAT, who has retired last year. I was very emotional from that. We're looking at Otis Lawrence, moved from Aston Martin. That's never going to be easy to replace someone like Otis, who was just lightning excitement around him, the raw pace he had last year. What are Aston Martin going to do to replace someone like Otis?
Well, they've called upon Ruben Pedreño, haven't they?
From Williams, of course.
So, they've gone shopping, and they've managed to acquire, I think, a very talented young driver. I mean, Ruben Pedreño is by far, I think, one of the more underrated talents. Maybe not quite as underrated as perhaps a Ulas Oz Yildirim, who was top-notch, I would say, last season, though did end up losing all his points at the end of a campaign after a tricky run-in with the stewards. But certainly laid the foundations of something of promise. And Pedreño is very much the same as well. But what I will say, looking at Otis Lawrence right now, we're talking about, again, another rising star. In fact, he's a star for now anyway.
You mentioned rising. I'm just going to jump in there. He better not leave his rig again.
No.
Because in his first win in Saudi Arabia, he jumped out of that rig, causing quite a stir. But that's what it means to these drivers when they cross the line first for the first time.
He kept his composure.
A maiden win. We saw what it meant to someone like Kimi Antonelli. This is what they are, the hours that go into this. You mentioned, Kai, about racing against Nico Longuet. How many hours would you put into being in the rig and perfecting your skills?
Well, during the COVID times, I would say I put a good amount of hours, and perfecting maybe isn't the best word to describe my racing ability on these games. Yeah, in my sim racing, did used to race against Nicolas Longuet. I don't think I've ever actually beaten him on the track. I mean, that man is different gravy, and maybe I'm just not up to par.
Yeah, we don't know the story behind why that moves happened. Maybe for the Ismail Fassi and the lineup, they wanted to shake things up. We don't know. But for Nico Longuet, another opportunity to show how good he is. Because every year I go in thinking, this is Nico's year. It could happen. New team, new setup. What can we expect from him?
It's been expected, I think, largely since he signed for Red Bull initially in the draft in 2018. I think we all believed that Nico could do it, and there is no doubt that he has the talent. There were some heartbreaking moments over the last couple of years, Tom. We look back at Zandvoort, the emotional scenes with Ferrari, who I must say should have challenged largely for a driver's title, more so back in 2023-24. It just did not work out for Nicolas Longuet on that occasion. But now you can have a fresh perspective, working for a team like Williams. They're very good at building up drivers. I mean, just look at what they did with Ismail Fassi. It was truly astounding to watch. And Longuet does have that raw talent and ability, and there's definitely in the right surrounding, it could work for him. Again, it's horses for courses at the end of the day. So we'll see whether he can unlock a little bit of added flair this time around.
Thomas Ronhaar, we haven't mentioned him enough in my opinion, moves to Mercedes, 20 consecutive top 10 qualifying results, 6 pole positions. What do we need to know about him? You're sort of in the colours that he's gone for today, Kai. So what can we expect of Thomas Ronhaar?
well, the Flying Dutchman will be looking to compete with his nation's counterparts as well, as you mentioned. 36 race starts, 459 career points, that totaling with 19 podiums and 12 pole positions. So if you want to watch out for one driver in qualifying, Thomas Ronhaar has to be up there as well as blistering on his one-lap pace. That also converts into his race pace as well, but a great driver is Ronhaar, one of the younger on the grid that we see, 20 years of age, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what he's able to do in the Mercedes colours. He's been in the F1 sim racing world for quite a while. 2023/24 season finished as runner-up. He's looking to do one better this time round.
George Morgan, Kai Puccini, I'll leave it in your capable hands as we ride on board with Ulash.
Thank you very much, Tom. Well, folks, now we look squarely back at the action with Ulas Azilrim, 2 purple sectors now as we look to alight the Shanghai circuit with soft tyre rubber. Ulash now to the top with a 130.632, a track where he has been proficient in the past. Like I said, 12 months ago, taking pole position for the Racing Bulls. This is a track that he certainly knows and loves. It looks like Nicolas Longuet is feeling the same venom as well, with 2 purple sectors already inside the first sector and second sector, now making his way into the third as well. Otis Lawrence has stormed to the top. 36 thousandths between those two, 60,000 separating the top 3, with Danny Berger making it an Alpine 1 and 3. Nicolas Longuet 4th fastest. Klaffenbach drops into 5th. Here comes John Evans arriving in this weekend. He's purple inside the first sector as well. The track is generating all the time. 2/10 off the pace though as Frederick Rasmussen storms to the top with a 130.485. They're coming in thick and fast, Kai.
Yeah, the driver in the 1,000 points plus crew is currently topping the timing tables, and those Red Bulls are looking strong. We're just waiting to see the second one come across the line. Ismail Fassi, one of the Ferrari drivers that we were just talking about earlier on, clearly proving that he has the pace, but only by 0.02 of a second he's going to top the order. 5.5 minutes remaining on the clock. Not long left for these drivers to punch in their times. Jarno Opmeer is going to punch his in there. Not as high as he would have been hoping to be, I'm sure, from the Red Bull driver. 5th for the reigning champion, a 10th off the times. It doesn't sound like a lot, but in this world it is.
But what Red Bull will be pleased that they're showing pace level with 2 drivers inside the top 5. Doesn't mean anything right now because, of course, when we move into Q3, that is where the top 10s matter. Ismail Fassi, though, still with the fastest lap so far. 2,000s better off, but 5,000s cover the entirety of the top 3. The top 4 all within 3/4 of a 10th. As Otis Lawrence now drifts around on his cool-down run at the moment. Some troubling scenes, though, for Jake Benham. 5.6 off the top for the All-Star, now in new colours in papaya, as we now watch Fassi make his way through the chicane section as he makes his way out of turn 13 once again. Obviously, with 4 minutes and 30 to go, they'll have a little bit of time left in the garage, and then it's one final lap to rein in a better time. And at the moment, in the drop zone, we're looking at Ruben Pedreño, Jake Benham and Duncan Hoffland, who is leaving everything to chance, stacking his chips to the centre of the table here, Kai.
Yeah, 100%. Hoffland needs to get a time on the board. He makes his way down the long back straight now, as you can see. Not on a hot lap for the moment, and low fuel in his car invalidated his last lap time, so still yet to put one on the board. He needs to get one in quickly, though, if he wants to have a chance of making it through to Q2. So he'll limp his way back to the pit lane, get into the pits. Fresh set of tyres on that Aston Martin car. Maybe a quick debrief with the engineer, look over the data, see where he can improve, and also notice where his weak points are to try and make sure that he's within that top 15. Only 3 drivers are going to get knocked out of this Q1 session, but if you are within those 3 drivers, it's detrimental to your race later on today.
It absolutely is. Obviously, as we know, strategy is important, but equally, a pole position or indeed a fast lap time, and at least to make it into Q3, can mean all the more importance for every single driver obviously looking to chase for wins, because naturally the higher up the grid you are, I mean, I'm just stating the obvious right now, you need to be there to obtain the big points. It's a long road to the end of the championship as Jarno Opmeer makes his way into the pit lane, and will of course be reassessing with his team. Remember, they do have engineers working alongside them in the current format, as we've experienced now over the last few years of the F1 Sim Racing World Championship. The engineers are right next to the drivers' rigs, feeding back data, and at the same time just alerting the drivers to any issues out on circuit. This man though, Danny Berger, twice a pole sitter, as we mentioned, was the first driver to take pole at China, and he did it back-to-back in 2018 and 2019. Currently stacked inside the top 10, now with Alpine. This time around, aligned with Otis Lawrence. You've got a nice mixture of experience and youth, of course, Otis proving that with the little experience he's had in this championship, that he can do a lot with it. Alpine have got a very fascinating and exciting lineup this season.
100%, and I think their pace on raw paper is one of the greatest on the field. Obviously, statistically, Red Bull are the strongest team coming into this campaign and should be the favourites coming into it, but I wouldn't count out Alpine too early. Ismail Fassi and Alfie Butcher both retiring from the session already. Thomas Runhard joining them as well, clearly feeling that they've done enough to get themselves through to Q2, and with just 2 minutes ticking down on the clock now, I think it's fair to say that that is the case. But these Alpine drivers, they're looking through to make it through to Q2. Otis Lawrence and Danny Beresnay, as we mentioned, last season finished 9th in the drivers' title. Did Danny Beresnay. He'll be wanting to do better than that. He knows he can do better than that. So it's going to be a prove yourself year. Forget about the bad results. Today is a new day, and today is the start of a brand new season. Danny Beresnay, welcome back. We know he has the pace. We know he can compete up at the front end, and he's shown that time and time again with 19 podiums and 5 wins over his career 64 race starts. So what can he do here in China? Will it start off with a bang, George?
Oh, we'll soon find out. We're coming into the final minute and 14. Danny Beresnay will begin his hot lap now this time, of course, taking that swooping initial corner, the delayed apex, then when you hit turn 2 in towards turn 3, and then after turn 4 the sector comes to an end just after turn 5, heading into the hairpin at turn 6. A lot of load put onto the tyres at the same time, so it's down to the drivers to manage it effectively. Also the ERS as well. Of course, we're going to be witnessing the use of DRS for the final time in Formula 1 this very championship as well. So lots of excitement here as now Danny looks to improve. Of course, just briefly in the green, but just look at that exit. It wasn't too bad at all, was it? He's right on the bubble, though, with his previous Delta. Now, it doesn't matter that he's inside the top 10 right now, because like we have seen already in the history of F1 sim racing, these times can change very, very quickly. And we've got every driver that has not retired out on track right now. Duncan Hoffland also included in that, still yet to lay down his initial lap time. Beresnay looking to hook this one up, though, as he comes out of the chicane at turn 11 and turn 12. This long straight, one of the longest you'll see in the sport as well here, Kai. Important you get a lovely time breaking point coming into the hairpin at the end of the straight.
And this third sector is so important here for Beresnay. We saw on the Delta, he was only up by 1,000th of a second on his personal best through Sector 1 and Sector 2. Pick out your breaking point here. Hard on the brakes. He goes through brake pedals like they're bottles of water, does 6'7", Danny Beresnay, and into the final bend now. Up on his Delta for the moment. It just needs to be a smooth sail to the line, and that's exactly what he needed. A great confidence booster and a boost in his time as well. He jumps up to 4th on the leaderboard right now, does Danny Beresnay. Sets himself up well heading into Q2, following soon after this.
Yeah, top 5 now, all within a 10th of a second. You're talking 3/4 of a tenth now between Ps1 to 5. There's now Duncan Hoffland with yet no time fielded on the board. He's got quite a little bit of traffic there as well as he makes his way down towards the hairpin at turn 14. The rear wing open here for the Dutchman. Of course, next up in front of him, Jake Benham, 5.6 as Nicolas Longuet announces his arrival. Otis Lawrence goes second fastest. The timer now ticked to 0 here at the end of Q1. It is now the time to see the laps unfurled. Crozen has just briefly gone 6, but now Klaffenbach has stolen it. Here comes Duncan Hoffland from 0 to potentially 100. That might not be safe. P11, Jake Benham crossed the line, goes 13th fastest. And now Jarno Opmeer remaining in 11th as well. Here comes Ruben Pedreño in his new Aston Martin team, chasing an improvement here to lift himself off the bottom to make his way into Q2. We've lost Pookie, we've lost Evans. Will we lose anyone else aside from Pedreño? It doesn't look like it. John Evans out of the session as well. There's the reaction. The sigh clear on the face of one John Evans. He will not make it through. Tamas Gal has just about, I think, nicked it in P15. A truly stunning start to qualifying, but it's Nicolas Longuet with first blood here, Kai.
Yeah, Williams on top for the moment, and there is the man that was quickest in the first qualifying session. Not a bead of sweat dropping from his forehead, so Longuet clearly confident in his ability, not breaking a sweat at all. No nerves are getting to the Frenchman right there. He's a seasoned veteran in the field and clearly proving that knowledge is key. Experience pays aplenty, and if Nicolas Longuet can keep up this performance for the rest of today, he's looking for the strongest start possible to an F1 sim racing season.
Yeah, what a start it is too, and just look at the top 3. We've got Otis Lawrence as well, once again representing this time for Alpine. Ismail Fassi, 3rd fastest as well. Just talk about some of these numbers as well in terms of the deltas, folks. I can tell you it's a 10 from P1 down to P11 with Ulash Ozyildirim. And I'm talking dead on a 10. Dead on a 10th, folks, to the very decimal. 94 thousandths for Alfie Butcher in 10th place to the top as well. Just brilliant stuff, it has to be said. Ruben Pedreño, unfortunately, not managing to pull off any exploits. It's Tamas Gal who was right on the bubble in P15, but not a grand visit for the first time in green for Ruben Pedreño. I'm sure no doubt he will improve as time draws on. Istvan Pukki might be slightly disappointed as well at the same time after a difficult early run. Elsewhere, Julian Klaffenbach coming in for the first time with Mercedes. Not bad for the newbie here, top 10. That's certainly some positive signs, Kai.
Yeah, not bad at all there from Klaffenbach, actually taking home the third fastest sector as well, so a purple sector to his name. I think it's great to see. This really shows how close these drivers are. Not one driver has more than one purple sector to their name. Nicolas Longuet actually set the fastest lap time of the session without having a purple sector. Those went the way of the first sector going to Thomas Ronhaar, then Otis Lawrence was quickest in the second. Third sector goes the way of Klaffenbach. So Mercedes, looking based off data, very strong lineup for the moment, but Nicolas Longuet, he can't be too confident going into this second session. No purple sectors, but the fastest time overall. He's got drivers hot on his heels.
Mercedes certainly not short of pace, much like they are at the moment in Formula One.
Yep.
In real life, of course, they're currently racing this weekend in for the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka as well. Of course, we will have Suzuka ourselves coming up through the course of the event as we go racing tomorrow. But we're focusing on China today, and there is Nicolas Longuet, your fastest man. A bit of a contrast between the two drivers, as we mentioned. Istvan Pukki out. Maybe some concerning factors for Williams, but this allows them, I suppose, to be a little bit open-minded with the strategy.
Well, yeah, with one driver out of qualifying already, it's unfortunate that you want to see. It's not the situation that Williams would want to find themselves in right now, but that does mean that all of their resources, all of their power can now be focused on Nicolas Longuet to make sure that he has the greatest adaptation and make sure that he's nurtured through these qualifying sessions. What can Williams put on the plate for the Frenchman? He seems very locked in at the moment, whether it's at home on his sim rig or here at the DreamHack Birmingham event. He just seems so comfortable. It's almost as if he's sat at home in his own sim rig. Nicolas Longuet, I would have to say, George, I think it's fair to say, I don't know about you, but one of the most adaptable drivers on the grid.
Yeah, no question. Very moldable as a talent. And, you know, we were chatting before as well when Tom was here with us, obviously alluding to his presence on the grid in the past with previous teams. He's been with Renault, of course, later Alpine. Kicked off his career with Red Bull back in the day, and now has since found himself in Grove after a stint with Ferrari at the same time, where he had many highs but also a few lows at the same time. But on his best day, Nicolas Longuet can be the very best in the world, and we'll wait and see whether we can realise that here as we move through to Q2. Of course, whilst he is fastest nonetheless in that first session, it's all about the third session, of course, where pole will be decided. But we get to an early scope as to how things may look as we make our way through the qualifying phase, not messing around with intermediate tyres this time. We're jumping straight onto the soft compound. And Nicolas Longuet now makes his way up through towards the S's once again. 13 minutes and 30 on the clock. No drivers wasting any time. They're all in a train of one another, which, whilst it can provide perhaps a little level of slipstream, at the same time it can be, I suppose, a tough occurrence, because if you get a slowdown due to a slow car in front, you never know, one might make a mistake. You know, you only get so many chances at laying down a lap time, Kai.
Yeah, and with these sessions developing on, you get less time session by session. China is always a very difficult track for qualifying because nobody wants to be that front man. Nobody wants to be in the position of Nicolas Longuet because of how long the straights are. It's so crucial that you have the slipstream just due to the straight line speed that is required down back straight here at China. Nevertheless, Nicolas Longuet is going to take on the challenge by himself and try and set it in his own free air. He doesn't have to worry about dirty air or aero wash from any driver in front of him, so it's focusing on the road indeed. Longuet, it's been a while since he's managed to set his last pole positions, 8 to his name, but none of them came last season. It was a difficult season last time round for the Frenchman. 0 pole positions, 0 wins, but only 1 podium, which came in Qatar. But China we were speaking to him yesterday. He's saying China is a circuit that he's very comfortable around, and especially on this game is able to get down to the nitty-gritty and find those fine margins and bring them out in the qualifying sessions, which was obviously displayed in Q1.
Absolutely. Well, he's already made his way through the first sector and does currently hold the purple first sector. He's just taken a purple second as well. Of course, other drivers will be passing through, and no doubt that might be exchanged as the track continues to evolve. At the moment, it's 26 degrees as it stands. It certainly won't evolve too much higher than what it already has done. It's 90 degrees in the air as well. Tom Manley also out on track. Interesting to note about him, of course, previous champion in F1 Esports Challenges back in the day. Of course, has now been certainly a long-stay competitor over the last few years with Racing Bulls, part of the Red Bull family, of course, at the same time, alongside Ulash Ozyildrim as their teammates together once again for back-to-back campaigns. Longe, though, not going to set an initial benchmark. He's going to come into the pits. It's not like he's going to be short of time, but Thomas Ronhaar not wasting any time. Jarno Opmeer, though, briefly to the top for now, as now Thomas Ronhaar goes second fastest, 29 thousandths between those two, as Jake Benham slots into third place for good measure with a 1:31.198. That is just over 2.5 tenths slower than Opmeer's fastest time. Benham and Opmeer once teammates at Mercedes a couple of seasons ago now, leading to Opmeer's second World Championship. Of course, the third World Championship then was to come later with Red Bull. In comes Danny Berejnet in the Alpine as well, once again back on the grid, and like we said, has gone fastest overall in qualifying in the past. Can he rediscover that same form? We will wait and see. But there is your reigning champion, Jarno Opmeer, fastest so far, only 3 times listed onto the board. The rest of the drivers coming into the pits for a rethink.
That does surprise me that so many drivers haven't went to plant a time on the board. A banker lap is so important here in F1 sim racing, especially when you're pushing the limits so hard every single lap. Most drivers will go out there on the circuit, maybe push 80-90% of their full ability, make sure that they have a time on the board, so if everything else goes wrong, at least they have some time that they can be held accountable to. Whether that be the fastest time that you set of the session, probably not, because of track development and also rubber being put down on the circuit. Jake Benham putting down some rubber himself, not on a fast lap, but he'll go through the hairpin and I'm sure peel into the pit lane, as that wouldn't have been the lap that he would have been hoping for. But Benham, the only McLaren driver to get a lap time on the board right now. Alfie Butcher as well, just sitting in the pit lane. I'm sure he will be on board watching along with his teammate. But Alfie Butcher, he's a driver that loves to leave it to the last minute. We noticed this over the course of the off-season and also yesterday in the practice as well. Alfie Butcher, he's never going to push less than 110%. He goes out on the track, he's giving it his all, and sometimes he leaves it down to the wire, leaves it down to those fine margins, and when the clock strikes 0, that's when Butcher strikes. And somehow, it's beyond me, it surprises me, it works every time.
It does for Alfie Butcher. He absorbs the pressure, I think, at the same time too, and being alongside someone like Jake Benham, who is now a seasoned campaigner in his own right, now being part of the McLaren fold. Of course, we've seen the departure of Lucas Blakely. We're now almost heading into a new era, I think, of McLaren in F1 sim racing now, looking ahead to what we're going to be seeing through the course of this campaign. I would say it's very similar to the complexion we have with Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, I would say, in real life. 2 young drivers, both chasing world titles, both capable, I think, on their best day of doing it as well, Kai. So it's interesting that we could see that dynamic play out here in sim racing too.
Yeah, I think McLaren are a great dynamic team at finding 2 very talented drivers that can bounce off each other and also work together when necessary. Pressure does make diamonds, and that comes in the form of McLaren Esports and also McLaren drivers, full stop. But you do have to remember that with that pressure comes great responsibility, and that means they are expected to perform race upon race. Diamonds make pressure, as you may have heard. It's interesting to see what Alfie Butcher is able to do. He is out on an out lap right now. Will this be the final time that we see Alfie Butcher put a lap on the board? It's invalidation or bust for Alfie Butcher. It's a great lap time or a not so great lap time on the board at all from the McLaren driver, as I'm sure he will be pushing that car right on the limits as well. Ulash Ozyildrim is out on the circuit right now, one of the RB talents that has been surprising us over the course of this season so far. In the practice day yesterday, another driver that we need to keep an eye on up at the front end. What do we expect here from Ulash?
Well, Ulash is a stern competitor, obviously at Racing Bulls once again, pole sitter as we mentioned already here at China last season. So whether he can rediscover that same thunder, we will wait and see. I can tell you he is purple inside the first sector for now, so has automatically displaced Jarno Opmeer's position up at the top, certainly where it comes to P1. If he can replicate it through the final two sectors, he certainly will displace Jarno Opmeer over provisional P1 here for now in the session. Of course, we've still got 7 minutes to go, so a lot can happen in between now and then here at this 5.451 kilometer Shanghai International Circuit, 16 turns. And of course, when we do go racing, we'll cover 153 kilometers in distance. Here comes Yildirim now down the long stretch. Need to prime his braking point heading into the hairpin this time, and the exit far more important as well if you're going to look to hook up this lap time. Looking to make it a trifecta of purples here, Ulas Yildirim, to lay down at least a decent benchmark heading through to the end of the session that will be coming up very soon. Here comes now the Turkish driver and does go fastest by a spirited 0.7 of a second. That is tidy, but Otis Lawrence coming back with a flurry. Here comes the Welshman now, Cymru Ambith, I'm sure he's thinking, coming through the final corner this time, and now up towards the line to register his next lap. Does go fastest, indeed, by 82 thousandths of a second. They're still finding time as Duncan Hofland comes out of the final corners here.
Yeah, there was definitely time to be gained there on that Yildirim lap. We noticed in priming his braking point, just missed the apex there of the hairpin of 14 as he was cycling down the gears. Wasn't able to get the car rotated like he would have been hoping for. And then again, a tank slapper on the exit of turn 16. That Rio was hanging out of the corner. Somehow managed to recover and get his foot on the accelerator to drive that car to the line. It's good enough for second on the board right now, but Yildirim in his own head will be kicking himself a little bit. He'll know that there's lap time to gain on that, and especially with it being such fine margins up at the front end as Rasmussen jumps up into second, he'll know that he can do better than that. Jarno Opmeer up to sixth. Not as high as I would have expected there from the reigning champ.
A sigh of exasperation from the reigning champion as now Jake Benham comes around the final corner, bottom of the tier at the moment. Only goes one place higher, just over 3.5 tenths away. The one thing that he will have, though, is time to set another lap. Can't afford for any mistakes now, Jake Benham. Of course, if he doesn't improve now, he will be eliminated and will not go through to the top 10 shootout. As it stands, folks, with the times that we have seen, it looks like that Ferrari are going to be one short if they head through, because Ismail Fassi in P11 with Julian Klaffenbach now 12th fastest, Tom Manley in 13th, Jake Benham in 14th, Tamas Gal down in 15th place right now. Should it remain as it is, those 5 will be departing, and that will leave us our top 10 heading into Q3.
Yep, the biggest departure of drivers that we will have seen yet today, as just on an in-lap right now, Tom Manley is going to have to up his game just a little bit, currently sitting in P13 in the order. I was expecting that RB driver to be a bit higher. Your bottom 5 currently in the elimination zone. Ismail Fassi, one of the drivers we saw top the timing order earlier in Q1, so expect that man to jump a little bit higher. Julian Klaffenbach, it was the fastest third sector in qualifying 1, but now finds himself in the risk of elimination. Otis Lawrence, though, we were talking about him earlier with you and Tom as well. One of the greatest talents that we have in the order right now, and I would say one of these favourites to upset Opmeer.
Well, the heat is going to rise now very soon. The driver's taking one last-ditch run into the pits before we head out for the final runs in Q2. Otis Lawrence with a 1:30.248 currently covets the top placing in this classification. Freddie Rasmussen 26 thousandths away with Ulash Yildirim 81,000. Just look at how tight these gaps really are. Thomas Ronhaar, who we're currently seeing on screen, heading into the pits, are like 96 thousandths off the top as well. It's mouth-watering, tantalizing as now they get prepared for the final runs. Of course, every race winner at China has gone on to win a world title in the history of F1 sim racing. Could the pole position decide that eventual race winner? Could that decide the champion? Who knows? We could be talking about that rounds down the line. Too early to tell right now, of course, though, Kai, as we now see Danny Berejnay not wasting any time, going out earlier than anybody else. I must say, 3 minutes to go, 2 minutes and 50, I should say. That is a fairly early escape.
You know, I don't blame him at all. It worked out earlier on for Nicolas Longuet, and clear track, clear head might be the key factor to Danny Berejnay getting himself on top of the order. And back to your point, George, I think the reason why we see champions develop here at China is it is such a great test of these drivers themselves. 65% of this circuit is completely flat out, and that means that the drivers need to be so precise when positioning their cars on the circuit, because time loss and time gain therefore comes from positioning, and that can just be millimeters to the apexes of the corners, but that makes such a large difference here when the field is so tight. Only 18% of the track is in braking zones, but we have so many braking zones, so many crucial braking zones down the back straight, exiting out of DRS into turn 14. We've seen drivers slip up in these qualifying sessions themselves. We saw Ulas Zildrim make a mistake there on his last fastest lap, was still good enough to get himself third on the qualifying board, but time to gain there for the RB driver, and let's see if he can improve on his final run, George. All of the drivers out on the circuit, it's going to be a mad dash to the line.
It is crunch time now, folks, to decide the top 10 heading into Q3. The drivers just getting their tyres up to necessary temperature now. The track temp, I can tell you now, is at 27 degrees. 19 degrees in the air. That's not changed one iota. Tom Manley, though, we're hoping that his placing inside the classification will change, however. 3/10 plus outside of the spoke in terms of Otis Lawrence's top time. A 1:30.248 is the time to beat so far. But they'll be more concerned with that P10 time that Joris Krozen has managed to lodge in. He's currently just over 2/10 away from Otis for now. Of course, Haas returning back with Krozen and Tamas Gal, two promising young starlets as well, making their way through league racing, eventually getting their seats a season or so ago. So now Gal looks to warm up those tyres. There you can see him in the bottom right of shot. And now heading down in towards the heavy braking zone at the hairpin to get ready to warm up for one final last chance to dance, potentially. As now Longay begins his run. Here's Otis Lawrence, your current P1 sitter, the man from Swansea, who's looking to hustle in yet another stellar qualifying performance to potentially tee up a race-winning performance. Of course, he'll have plenty of competition. Frederick Rasmussen, former champion, also in the mixer, down in second. He's on his outlap currently. Ulas Zildrim, former pole sitter. Danny Berejnej, twice a pole sitter around this circuit. The Hungarian looking to light up those rears. He's purple inside that middle sector as well. This isn't bad here for Danny Berejnej. He's going to jettison now down through this long straight with DRS open to then launch himself out of turn 14 in bid for a top time to join his teammate. Can he do that? Berejnej, who has been here many times before, has tasted championship gold, has helped fellow drivers alongside him to championship gold in the past, but looking to secure a place heading into Q3 as the timer now moves into stoppage time with it at zero. Here comes Berejnej. No improvement despite the purple middle sector. Not great for Danny Berejnej, but Nicolas Longay could yet find improvements. He's purple in the first two sectors, bringing the car so close to the inside line now, jettisoning out, moving across as he takes the apex, coming out of the hairpin now and spinning those rear tyres. Here comes the Frenchman, all in blue this season as he now curtsies through the final corner. Nicolas Longay looking for an improvement now. It could be a massive improvement. It certainly is. First fastest for Nicolas Longay, all but briefly.
You could not thread the needle any tighter there for Nicolas Longay. Fastest third sector gets him up to the top of the board and really sets the tone for the rest of the drivers out there on the field. Ismail Fassi, can he get himself out of elimination? Yes, he can. Up into second there for the Ferrari driver. Only 4 thousandths off that pole position time here in Q2. Jumping up, Tom Manley, shake of the head is just not enough for the RB driver to escape the qualification zone. And that is going to be the end of our session. Thomas Ronhaar still on a lap, but he will retire, which means that we have confirmation of 5 departures. Thomas Gao, Julian Klaffenbach, Tom Manley, Danny Berejnej, and Jake Benham will leave us in Q2.
Yeah, frightening stuff indeed. Danny Berejnej, who, if you remember, did not improve coming out of that final sector. That's what really did it for him. It was Nicolas Longay, though, back again at the top, back-to-back qualifying sessions now, Q1 and Q2, top of the shop by 5,000 spokes ahead of Ismail Fassi, of course, former Williams driver. The stories write themselves. Of course, he's now with Scuderia Ferrari. We've got Thomas Ronhaar, of course, as well, back in third place. Alfie Butcher fourth, with Otis Lawrence also inside the top 5. Alpine now have got to stack everything against Otis Lawrence for a potential pole position here now, Kai.
They really do, and there is so much at stake right now. Nicolas Longuet proving to be the top dog out of the pack. He must have heard us earlier on say that he didn't gain a pole position in his last season. He said, you know what, guys, I'm going to prove you wrong right here. Fastest in Q1, fastest in Q2. Can he do the hat trick and get himself on pole position for the race later on? Well, his pace is looking immense. If he's able to do that, I think it will be hard to take your eyes off Nicolas Longuet. The Frenchman is in great form.
But we talk about average qualifying positions, Kai, because I think this is an interesting stat. He is listed 5th out of the all-time average qualifying positions at 6.64. So the fact that he is flittering around generally consistently inside that top 6 is quite something. If you want to talk about some of the other stats, some of the other drivers, Thomas Ronhaar, who's had once again another stellar display, sat in 3rd fastest, 2.94. I mean, that is sensational. I mean, what a record that is. I mean, essentially, you're talking the first 2 rows in the grid.
Mistakes happen. Drivers crash out in qualifying, yet Thomas Ronhaar, that is unbelievable. Basically saying that every qualifying session that Thomas Ronhaar competes in, he is within the top 3. And if you have to be worried about one driver on one lap pace, I think that has to be Ronhaar. 2.94 for Ronhaar. The next closest driver is Freddie Rasmussen, 4.6, his highest career total points here in F1 Esports, but still another 3 positions average behind in qualifying. Thomas Ronhaar, all eyes will be on him for this final qualifying session, but Nicolas Longuet, as you said, 5th overall in the all-time qualifying positions, looking to turn the tables.
Well, with stats like this now, if he was to continue and make his way through to pole position and replicate what he's done in Q1 and Q2, that number's only going to shrink as we make our way through the season. Should it continue through the successive rounds we're going to be bringing you as well, folks. There is Alfie Butcher, 4th fastest coming out of Q2. Not bad at all here for the Papaya Ace. Of course, started his career in F1 sim racing with Haas and now finds himself at McLaren, obviously. Now, essentially a locker room leader alongside Jake Benham since the departure of Lucas Blakely, but he has settled in rather nicely. He's the sole representative of McLaren inside Q3 as well. Truly astounding stuff. But just looking ahead, obviously we've got a real close battle. Q3 is about to get underway as well. 11 minutes and 40 on the clock as it stands. The drivers about to leave to post their outlaps. I mean, just give us your summary, Kai, of what we've seen so far.
I mean, there's definitely been some surprise departures. I don't know about you, George, but when we look at Alpine, obviously we have such a fast driver in Otis Lawrence, but then again, Danny Beresnay should be your banker. That's the man that you should be able to rely on to make it into these crucial zones. He shouldn't be fumbling under pressure. He shouldn't be folding under pressure, and there shouldn't be any crunch, inability, any knock in the shield from Danny Beresnay. But coming out of Q2, we don't see him in the top 10.
Well, let's find out a little more. Nicola is on the ground.
Yep, I'm stood with Danny Beresnay right now. How on earth are you doing? I mean, that was a tricky Q2, but it seems particularly tight this season so far. And does it feel different because you're in front of a live audience?
No, I'm happy about the audience, and it wasn't really a tricky session, to be honest. We cannot get better and more consistent conditions than that. So it was my fault. I was up on my banker by half a tenth, even arriving to the last sector, that I felt like I could even gain some more time, even just relying on track evolution, and should have been safely through with that. But I made the mistake, lost the backhand. Even my downshift for the hairpin was not ideal. Maybe had a little bit of wheel spin at the exit because of that, and the rear tires just overheated for the end of the lap. I'm really happy to see Otis, my teammate, is still in, and this is one of my favorite tracks to race wheel to wheel in, so I'm optimistic, looking forward to gain some positions from here.
Well, clearly it is one of your favorite tracks because you did very well here in China last year. You got on a podium. So how would you attack that when the race is later?
Well, I think I can admit to everyone that I will probably try to pit very differently to the others, and either gain a lot of track positions or have a nice tire offset so we can make some moves for the second stint.
I think the trick is not to give away any secrets, Danny. Right, back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Great to hear the insight from Danny Beresnay. Obviously 7 pole positions in his time in F1 sim racing, but unfortunately that number's not going to increase anytime soon, Kai. But nice to hear that he is still quite buoyant about his hopes and expectations, and certainly that of his teammate, and for good reason.
yeah, very confident in his own ability around this circuit. He said that China is one of his favorite tracks to race around, so keep an eye on him making his way through the order in the race later on today. Strategy is already becoming a talking point as Berezne is looking to throw a wild card out there and try and do something different to the rest of the drivers and hope that works in his favor. It could be hero or zero for Danny Berezne when it comes to the race in terms of strategy, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Before that, we've still got 10 drivers that need to assert their positions and figure out who's going to be on pole position later on.
Well, a breakdown of who is in this Q3 session. We've got Duncan Hoffland at Aston Martin, Joris Krozen, of course, who'll be racing for Haas. We've got Thomas Ronhaar at Mercedes, Nicholas Longuet at, of course, the Williams team with Alfie Butcher in Papaya McLaren. Then we have Otis Lawrence as well at Alpine, Ishmael Fassi in a Ferrari, Freddie Rasmussen at Red Bull, along with his teammate Jarno Opmeer. Red Bull, one of the few teams with 2 drivers lined up in this session, which can only prove to be useful, making your way into a race scenario where you can have 2 potentially fighting for pole position, and indeed in terms of the top 10 when it comes to big points through the strategy. But this man, Ulas Yildirim, 2 purples so far in the first 2 sectors. Now that's looking rather striking for the Turkish driver, and of course, as we have said, currently the reigning pole sitter at China from the year that's just gone by. He's just gone briefly fastest again. Of course, this is just the initial lap we're seeing, a 1:30.7, not the fastest we have seen by any means so far, but at least a benchmark for him to work against with yet more runs to come, I'm sure. Outlaps, though, for every other driver. Ulas going very early at the start of this session, though, Kai.
Yeah, just looking to get a time on the board, something that he can fall back on and rely on as well. But George, watching these drivers, one thing that I've noticed that's very interesting as well is the differentiation in driving style between all of these drivers. You may look at their lap time, see how close they are, and think that they drive exactly the same, but they don't at all. If we just look at that hairpin right there, Ulas Yildirim just loves to go deep under the braking, maybe push it a little bit past the apex, then get the car rotated. But the likes of Nicholas Longuet, when we were on board with him in the last session, Longuet picks out his braking point, gets that car stopped and rotated over the curb at the hairpin, and it's those differentiations that make the drivers unique as well. One driver opting for the shorter line through the corner, which will gain him time theoretically through that, but Ulas Yildirim will be carrying more speed through the corner, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out in a racing scenario as well.
What I found interesting, I caught up actually with Ulas Yildirim yesterday,
Yep.
and also Joni Tormela. Now, both of them as racing drivers, sim racing drivers, have had wide responsibilities in terms of taking part in various different kinds of events, driving different cars. They both said to me that this year they're making a total step change. Every bit of focus is placed into F1 this season, and for good reason. They have got 2 phenomenal talents. Joni Tormela, also a veteran, back under the fold of Racing Bulls, which is spectacular to see. He's been at Toro Rosso, later AlphaTauri as it was known. Now, of course, Racing Bulls, as now we see Otis Lawrence flying out of the final corner. Now, he did have purple inside that first sector. No surprise, because, of course, it was Ulas Yildirim laying down that benchmark, 1:30.7, not the fastest we've seen at all so far today. But as far as benchmarks go, it's not a bad place to start. But just look at the difference, 6.5 tenths plus from Otis Lawrence. Here comes Nicholas Longuet, fastest in Q1, fastest in Q2, looking to briefly go fastest in Q3, but not this time, just under 8 tenths of a second. Rasmussen goes second fastest in the initial. Not bad from the Red Bull driver. Purple in the first sector as well, though, has gone Thomas Ronhaar's way. Here's Joris Krozen in the Haas now. He's looking to light up those rear tyres. Now making his way up towards the line. Purple inside that first sector, but only enough for 6th fastest, just over a tenth away from the top. Jarno Opmeer joins his teammate. They're 2 and 3 abreast now at Red Bull as Ishmael Fassi splits the 2 of them there and goes 3rd fastest in the Scuderia Ferrari. More to come, though. Ronhaar, like I said, purple inside that first sector. The middle sector, maybe not quite as rosy, but he's going to lay down a lap nonetheless and go 4th fastest ahead of Alfie Butcher. Opmeer now has toppled down to 6th. So the first lap's coming in, and it's Otis on top for now.
Your running order will not stay the same at all. Well, it might do for a couple minutes now, as with 5 minutes remaining on the clock. This is the calm before the storm. All of the drivers now have their banker times on the board. Every single driver has completed at least 1 lap in this session, and Otis Lawrence trying to assert his dominance as early as possible, as as much as ability plays a factor into these competitors and into this game, the mental factor is such a strong thing as well. You have to have great confidence in your own ability and your own driving to make sure that you're able to push yourself right to the limit every single lap without making a mistake and without breaking mental focus, as Otis Lawrence is able to do so on his first lap. A 1:30.052 is such a strong banker lap, George. That's going to be hard to beat even with track development.
I was about to say, I mean, that is quite the level of improvement, I think it has to be said. I mean, after witnessing what we saw in the first 2 sessions, Otis Lawrence just goes to show that he is not messing around here. He is looking to lay down those early benchmarks, not worrying about what's going on around him. Certainly there's no strategy where it comes to qualifying. It's just based on outlap or just single one-lap pace by and large. So obviously it does mean that there's pressure on everyone else to better it, especially now at DreamHack. We've got to talk about this a little bit more. We are in front of a capacity crowd audience, of course, 50,000 plus tickets sold across the weekend. We're going to be seeing many people, of course, tuning into the sim racing. Equally, for those of you listening or watching at home as well, for that same measure, I'm sure you've all got your predictions. I'm going to throw you under the bus here, Kai. Ooh. What's your prediction as we come into the final runs very soon? Of course, 3 minutes and 24 to go.
I hate the fact that you've just done that to me. And to make it fair, I'm going to bounce that question straight back to you as soon as I get my answer. But one of the drivers that I used to race against, he's been so strong in qualifying so far. He's got the stats to back it as well. Nicholas Longue, it's hard to go against him.
It is hard to go against him. I mean, obviously, I think Otis Lawrence also has the proficiency to do it. I know we were chatting about it just prior before we moved into qualifying first and foremost. But yeah, this is a tantalizing situation. Just look at the top 4, 63,000 now between them. It could go anywhere here at this stage. It's a 1:30.052, currently holding all the cards at the top. But once again, not all 3 sectors go in the way of Otis Lawrence. If we actually dial down the sectors, it's Thomas Ronha who is actually fastest in the first and the third sector, just lacking in the middle. And of course, that middle sector, not many long straights. It's rather technical, Kai.
That is the technical section, and it's that transition from the long flowing corners, carrying as much minimum speed as possible throughout those sections and transitioning into heavy braking zones, trying to rotate the car, flicking it into the corner. It can become difficult for the drivers to change adaptability between those sections. But Thomas Ronha, looking at his past, as we mentioned, the driver with the highest qualifying position in history on average, currently sitting 4th on the board, 2 purple sectors to his name. I mean, the third could very much go his way, just if he's able to iron out those mistakes and find the time lost. And that's exactly what his engineer and team will have been communicating to him in that pit stop whilst they were looking over the data. They'll be looking, saying, here, look, Thomas, this is where you're losing the time. This is what you need to do differently. And now it's all on him to make those changes.
And this is the benefits of having the engineers alongside these teams as well, that sat alongside. Obviously, it evolved over the years, F1 sim racing. We look at it now, it's a whole different perspective where you've got the engineers right alongside, conversing with the drivers, giving them those updates, much like we see on the pit wall at a real Formula One weekend. Now, are we perhaps playing ourselves our hands a little bit short here, Kyle, making a mistake? Because Freddie Rasmussen, who we just saw leave the pit lane as well, 17 pole positions in his pocket, the highest of any driver in F1 sim racing history. You can largely put that down as well to his tenure in the sport. But still, you have to be an outright professional. You have to have star quality to be able to pull something like that off. Are we making an error by not suggesting he could do this?
Well, it's very much possible that he can. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to. As we can see there, he's had 17 pole positions out of his 72 race starts, which is, I mean, for a very high percentage of race starts are going to be starting from pole position there for the driver in the Red Bull colours. Red Bull, one of the strongest teams on the grid. Jarno Opmeer, we haven't actually mentioned his name much throughout this qualifying session.
Despite him being reigning champion.
Yeah, Opmeer hasn't really been jumping out in terms of one-lap pace at the moment. He still has one more chance to prove us wrong, and I'm sure that's exactly what he'll do here now we've mentioned it.
It's the theme continued, Kai. At the end of the day, we know this from Jarno. The one-lap pace is not his forte. It's the strategy where it comes to race time that matters in his mind. Remember, quali for show, points for dough, as they do say. As we now look at Freddie Rasmussen, he was a podium sitter back in 2019 with Red Bull, finishing second in behind David Tanitza in the Italians' championship winning year. But this time, looking to go one step closer Obviously, we'd like to go one step closer here in qualifying as well. Sat behind Otis Lawrence by 12 thousandths, but he's purple inside that first sector, and that could prove to be oh so valuable here for the Great Dane, champion-elect. Now, a season before last with Red Bull as well, it was his very first, which is hard to fathom, especially considering the run that he has had. Rarely positioning himself outside of the top 3 in a world championship. Last season, though, was a devastating year for Freddie Rasmussen, but saw fit to help his teammate to a magnificent third F1 Sim Racing World Championship crown. Here comes Freddie now, out of the final corners. Well, certainly, this corner in itself needs a dynamic exit, a brilliant exit. He may yet find one coming through the final bend now at turn 16 and will now fly up towards the line. Freddie Rasmussen looking to take first blood. Does indeed go fastest for now. Ulas Azildarim. Can he do it? No. Second quickest here for the Racing Bull driver. He gives a grimace as now the Flying Dutchman, reigning champion Jarno Opmeer, goes fourth fastest, second row for the Flying Dutchman. Here comes Ismail Fassi. Currently rooted down in 6th. Can he improve? No. 25 thousandths off the top. Is there any time to be found elsewhere? Thomas Ronhard last but certainly not least. Can he find himself at the top? No. Alfie Butcher, fourth fastest. It's Freddie Rasmussen on pole for the first time here at China.
Fast Freddie on top once again. He took a 1-year break out of outstanding form in the championship of champion from 2023/2024, and now in 2026 Rasmussen is back with a vengeance. 2 fastest sectors to gain himself on that lap and gets himself the pole position by 300ths of a second. Smallest margins is what separated Freddie Rasmussen and Ulas Azildarim. Azildarim did a great job to try and put himself up there, but still, Rasmussen, neither of us mentioned him in terms of predictions, but he comes through as a roaring talent.
I did say, did we make a mistake not making him perhaps our prediction for pole position? And indeed, I was right to make that claim, because 18 pole positions now for Freddie Rasmussen, the Great Dane, back on top. And no doubt, I wonder whether this harks back to last season, Kai. A devastating run, 7th in the championship. Yep. Totally unlike Freddie. Not what we have seen from him in the past, but now back where I suppose we always see him being, certainly up at the top. That's where he belongs, right?
Yeah, well, clearly feeling that he has something to prove this season. Rasmussen is back to show us what his ability is capable of, and that pole position is reminiscent of the old Freddie Rasmussen that we're used to from that 2024 season, from the 2022 season where he finished runner-up as well. This could be another year where we could see Rasmussen take home that second championship under his belt to help his own stats and also boost Red Bull's stats overall as well. 2 Red Bulls in the top 5. Don't forget about Jarno Opmeer, 5th on the grid, maybe a little bit further down than he would have been hoping for, but as a 3-time champion, he can use that knowledge to help make his way through the grid off the start. Yeah,
I mean, that's great from a strategy sense for Red Bull. I want to give another hat tip to Ulas Azildarim. I mentioned him earlier on, pole sitter last year, came narrowly close to taking yet another pole position. 38 thousandths was the gap, 82 between our top 3, with Nicolas Longuet down in 3rd place as well. He looks like a different driver in Williams' team this season.
Cool, calm, and collected. That's exactly what you want in fresh colours. And Nicolas Longuet, a top 3 start from him. He won't be complaining with that at all. Couldn't do the hat-trick in qualifying, but 3rd on the grid is still going to be a great position to set yourself up for the race later on today. Definitely keep an eye out for him when the lights go out.
Well, in the meantime, now we have just witnessed the stellar qualifying, and now we can head down to the floor. Obviously, Nicolas standing by and getting ready with our pole sitter.
Yep, that's right. I'm standing next to our pole sitter, Freddie Rasmussen. Does it feel like you're back where you belong?
I mean, I still have 0 points, so not yet.
You know what I mean, though. Over the last few years, you've been doing this for so long. It feels like you're the most skilled and the guy that's been doing esports for the longest time. You're kind of old hat, dare I say it. But here you are with the newbies. You just smashed it, got it on pole.
Yeah, it was a good lap. Still got it, I guess.
Still got it. And I just want to also point out, right, Freddie came out, I said hi, shook his hand, and sort of cold, normal, chilled hands, whereas I was expecting kind of hot and sweaty.
Yeah, it's the same when I play Counter-Strike at home. When anytime I'm gaming and there is a bit of pressure, then my hands get cold.
So how do you feel going ahead with China later on this afternoon?
We'll see. We have to make a strategy and then hope for the best.
See, this is what I kind of love about you. I know I've interviewed you a few times before, and there's always something very calm and very collected about you, Freddie. And that's what I like, because you kind of approach every quali, every race with a very calm head. But surely, I think with an audience here, we're here at DreamHack, there's lots of people watching live. Do you feel any more pressure today than you have done in the past?
No, it's the same as usual. I think it never goes away, even though I've been doing this a long time. There's always going to be pressure and nerves. You just have to be able to handle it.
And if you could give any words for the 3 rookies that are joining this season, what would you like to say to them?
Good luck.
That's it. God, I love you, Freddie. Right, back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Nicola. It's so good to see Freddie, and that's what we expect of him. He's just thinking about points. Points win you a championship. He's got to come up with a strategy. Jarno Ottmer, his teammate, down, starting in P5, and we saw the trophies being handed back, but a great start for Red Bull, showing what they're capable of. Jarno, we know, isn't the greatest qualifier, but he's won more titles than any other driver. So, look, fantastic calling of that qualifying, gentlemen. Let's talk about some of those highlights from the quali that we just witnessed. Any surprises at the beginning with John Evans and Ruben Barrichello and Istvan Pukki heading out in Q1?
I think it was tough for John. I think largely, mainly due to the fact I'm not sure how much preparation he has had coming into this event by and large. But I mean, give him credit. You know, it's always tough when you come to a LAN environment in front of so many people that are tuning in and watching, of course, across the globe, but especially here at DreamHack. Elsewhere, I mean, again, not ideal, I think, for some of the other drivers on the grid. I think the biggest shock as well, Danny Berejnay, I think, getting left behind on the run in towards Q3. Obviously, whilst they did have Otis Lawrence in the firing line, hasn't been necessarily the best qualifying for Alpine. Probably expected a little bit more. Obviously, Otis finishing in 7th in Q3 as well. They've got work to do. But yeah, there are a few shocks there. And I will say this, credit again to Ulas Zildrim. I mean, second fastest off the back of that run. Very nearly taking pole for a second successive year.
What a start that would have been for him, but a very good start at the moment. From 1st to 9th, just 0.02 of a second separates those 9 drivers in total. So incredible scenes from that. What did you take overall from quali there, Kai?
Yeah, it was very tight-knit all the way through, and I have to agree with George. Danny Berejnay was the big shock for me going out in Q2. Obviously, we'd expect the Hungarian to rely on his experience to carry him through into that final qualifying session, but inevitably, it wasn't just enough. He's still confident for the race later on, and Freddie Rasmussen being the driver to come out on top. As Nicola asked him, is this what we should expect? Freddie says he's back. I think I almost saw a half smile on his face there during the interview. Some of the most emotion that we've managed to get out of Freddie Rasmussen in recent times, but he says he's not happy yet. 0 points still total in the championship for him. Maybe we can ask him again after the race.
Well, there is your starting grid position. 1st to 10 with Duncan Hoffman rounding out for the Aston Martin team. Thomas Ronner, Ismail Fassi, Otis Lawrence, with all the names we expected. Joris Krozen. That's a great start for him in this campaign.
Fabulous. I honestly think that you have to give them time. I think especially with Tamas Gal as well, Joris Krozen, both are very talented drivers that we have seen progress through the league racing fold. Obviously, it's a different factor when you come into F1 sim racing, especially in front of a live audience. But for Krozen, that is a massive result to start the season. And if he can build on this momentum, it could be oh so important to their championship campaign. Ismail Fassi, again, similar to Otis Lawrence, probably expected perhaps a little bit more. I did worry about perhaps the adjustment time moving into the Ferrari, high level of, he needs to make an impact, needs to make a splash. Thomas Ronhar as well outside the scope. Probably would have expected him to be a little bit closer to the top. I want to give credit as well to Duncan Hoffland as well, Tom. I mean, coming in with Aston Martin, they're having a difficult time in Formula One at the moment, as it is. But in the sim racing space, with a driver in the top 10, that's huge. Let's
look at the other 8 drivers where they'll be lining up, and we go racing around the Shanghai Grand Prix later on today. Not long now for the drivers, as Freddie Rasmussen said, to strategize, think about how they're going to approach this race. And as you see there, we mentioned earlier, starting at P15, Jake Benham. He did mention a little bit nervous. All the drivers a little bit nervous to start the season, to get into it. But what can these drivers back at the grid hope to do? Because we know how competitive, we know how close F1 sim racing is. Is it going to come down to the strategy potentially, Kai? Or can someone like Jake Benham obviously push to get in those points?
Well, strategy is going to be an interesting one because China is one of those tracks that's not so harsh on the tyres for these drivers, so we won't see as high degradation or as much graining on the tyres as we would see at other circuits. So drivers, therefore, can push the cars just a little bit more, but that's when we see mistakes start to creep in. So drivers need to manage their cars, they need to manage their pace, manage their tyres as well. Strategy is going to be a big thing as well, but consistency is key. Time and time again, that is what it all whittles down to.
Let's hear from the brand new Alpine driver, Otis Lawrence, starting off in P7 around Shanghai.
Otis, this is what makes my job very tricky, because you came up to me, I said, how are you? And you said, disappointed. However, there'll be lots of people watching right now from home that have become big fans of you over the last year. You've got quite a big personality, and it's disappointing not to see you smiling, which is normally what you'd be doing. But how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, you know, it's not what I wanted, of course. I was on for a good lap until a hairpin. I made a massive mistake on the exit of the corner, which lost me a P3, but we still weren't quick enough to fight for the balls. But yeah, I'm super confident for the race. We have a really strong team behind us. Danny Bresnay as well. He got unfortunate as well during his laps, so I'm sure we can get back in the race. I feel a bit stronger around here in the race, so yeah, let's see what happens.
And hey, you look good in blue.
Not too bad.
How are you settling into the new team?
Feels great, honestly. The team's been fantastic. You know, I want to thank Harvey as well. He's been such a fantastic part, and Nathan, who was here in G2, as well as Ben. They've, you know, given me such a foundation to start upon an Alpine, and I'm so happy I've moved here. It's the best team I've moved to, so nothing against Aston, but Aston's been fantastic as well. But yeah, I'm just, you know, super happy I came here.
I mean, starting in P7, anything can happen in the race later on today. But how are you feeling ahead of it? Because we are in a live situation. It's a very loud room. I know in the past you've got in trouble for being a very noisy person. So this kind of gives you forgiveness for shouting and screaming if you want to.
Yeah, maybe I'll shout louder if I get pole. So yeah, it's a fantastic crowd. I want to thank everyone that's came. You're all amazing. So yeah, thanks.
So, ahead of tomorrow. No, not ahead of tomorrow. I keep wanting to think it's tomorrow. It's literally later on today. So what are you going to do in your little break between now and the actual race later on?
Well, I'm going to firstly regroup with my team. We're going to talk about the race. We just forget the quali now. Obviously not the greatest quali, but a P7 after a bad quali is technically good. So yeah, we'll just regroup, focus for the race, and see what we can do there.
And how's your relationship with Danny going?
Oh, he's fantastic. He's a very interesting bloke. He's very funny as well. He's a very fantastic teammate. Helps a lot on setup as well, and he's amazing. So I'm happy to have him.
See, this is nice. Between this chat, we've started with a very frowny face, and now you're smiling.
Yes, it's quite easy to get a smile on my face. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you very much. Tom, back over to you.
Thanks, Nicola. Basically, what Otis did there was take away the compliment immediately. You felt you'd done hard, but Otis always a smiley guy. Nicola doing a fantastic job talking to drivers who might be disappointed from what happened in quali. I've never had a compliment. Someone said I'm very interesting, but that is the quote for Danny Bresnay, a very interesting guy. Bad quali, turned it pretty good with a P7. It's still all to play for.
It is, yeah, I would agree, Tom. I think obviously when we move into the race, China's a bit of a funny one concerning strategy. Though I will say, in terms of tyres, we are going to probably find ourselves working with the mediums and the hards. Whichever way they choose to go to start off with is obviously another question. But naturally, it does open a few doors if you are further down inside the top 10 or just outside the top 10. I think largely, if we're looking at playing hands, I think you can't look any more than Red Bull, really, in terms of where they're placed. I mean, having Otmir inside P5 is actually massive. I think if you ask Jarno about his qualifying performance, I think he'll tell you it was brilliant. But Alpine also have an advantage here as well, having Otis inside that top 10. I still think they can make use of Danny Berejnay as well. So they're not out of a playing hand just yet.
Okay, Kai, how do you see this one going? And it's really interesting. I don't know if you noticed how much of a team surround these drivers. I mean, Otis alluded to it. It is all about the background team that are now going to regroup because we've got an hour before we go racing. Really cool. I find it fascinating to see how many people are around these drivers to help them get in the right mind frame for this.
yeah, just on face value, you don't realize how much work actually goes into getting these drivers prepared and ready for every session. They have a great team surrounding them. They'll have their own mental coach. They'll have their data analysis, and they can all break that down in between sessions and figure out where they're maybe lacking a little bit of pace and where they can gain that pace for the race so that they can improve and get the optimal positions possible. But in terms of who my favorites are for the session, as you mentioned, Tom.
I didn't ask you, but I like this. Who are your favorites? Absolutely, go for it. It was my next question, so maybe telepathy, you just understood.
That's the thing. It must be the chemistry between us, but I can't put all of my eggs in one basket. I can't say just one driver. I think there's so many drivers that could take away this one. We have to watch Beresnay coming from further back on the grid. We know his race pace is immense, and he'll be using that to his advantage as well. He said he's going to throw a bit of a curveball and try and go on a different strategy, so let's see if that works out in his favor. Nicolas Longuet starting from third on the grid. He was fastest in 2 of the qualifying sessions, but can he take home another race victory? But Freddie Rasmussen, he said he's back on top form. Does that translate into a race win?
You set it up perfectly. F1 Sim Racing is back. The 2026 season is starting off here at DreamHack in Birmingham. We'll be back in just over an hour as we go racing around the Shanghai Grand Prix. Thank you very much to Nicola, to Kai, and to George. We'll see you very shortly.